About 2022, this is from Elias Hartlieb. I'd like to know your opinion on how the new regulations will affect the driving styles. Who do you think it will favour the most? Who could be in trouble? Or are they all going to adapt really quickly? Well, it's a good question because that is the most interesting aspect of any new rule change, isn't it? How it does affect the driving styles. I mean, we don't hear a lot of talk about that, but I try to do as much as my eyes will allow me to discuss and compare driving styles and approaches of the different Formula One drivers. So let's kind of go through it. I think the key issue with the 2022 cars, as I've said already in the video we put out about Lewis, is that in theory, still yet to be proved, there's only a 15% drop off in downforce if you're behind another car now. Ergo, it's going to be much easier to follow another car, and ergo, it's going to be easier to overtake that car. So I think that is what will be the defining driver style chat point about this new regulation. So let's think about that. I think it'll hurt drivers like Lewis, who are very good at overtaking, Max, who's very good at overtaking, and Charles Leclerc, who's very good, I think. My top three anyway. I think Lando's, well, let's go through the grid now. I think George Russell will find it easier to sit behind Lewis and to give Lewis a hard time if he wants to. So there's that element. And you'll see George perhaps taking advantage of that by being even more aggressive than he naturally is. At Red Bull, Perez is very good, has been and always will be probably very good in defense. Very good at finding a sort of Rubens Barrichello-like rhythm and groove, and it's very difficult to force him into an error. I guess now that aspect of Sergio's DNA will be slightly less effective because the driver behind, regardless of who he is, will have a little bit more opportunity to sort of put a nose down the inside and force the issue with Sergio. So I'd say some of Sergio's armory will dissolve a little bit because he's not going to be quite as effective in defense as he used to be. Ferrari, I've never seen, I always thought, how do I phrase this? The minute I saw Carlos Sainz Jr. drive, which was the Formula BMW race at Singapore, he's always been very car control-y, sideways-y, opposite lock in love driver. But oddly, that doesn't manifest itself in the wet particularly, or indeed in aggressive moves in traffic in the way that it did with, say, Jochen Rindt. And so I think it'll help. I think the new regs will help Carlos a lot because all of a sudden, like George, he'll be able to sit a lot closer to Charles and put a lot more pressure on Charles. And so I think it'll be good for Carlos Sainz, these new regs, for sure. Because he hasn't been the greatest overtaker. He's obviously pulled off the odd move, but if you look at the way he sort of sat in the Hungarian Grand Prix and didn't really move forward, I think this time around in that situation, you'll see Carlos Sainz being a lot more aggressive. So it will help him. For the same reasons I think it'll hurt Lewis, I think it'll hurt Charles. I think it'll take away one of his little calling cards, which is that he's very good in traffic, and that'll go because he'll be no better than Carlos all of a sudden. So in fact, it'll weaken Charles' position at Ferrari even more probably, even though in my view, Charles is the far more polished driver overall in terms of his physical talent and the way all the inputs he has. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. If you look at McLaren, Daniel also is very good in traffic, has been over the years. He's very good at setting up situations and taking advantage of them, sort of 23 laps to go in any given Grand Prix. That's what Daniel's all about. And also first laps. And that will, you'll probably see Lando doing a lot more of that now because it's going to be easier for Lando to sit behind the car in front as well. So I think, if anything, it's bad news for Daniel and good news for Lando because he's already quicker overall than Daniel, and now he's going to be just as effective in traffic, if not more so. So that'll be a good one for him. Fernando Alonso, when you get down to the midfield, those guys will all be thinking, isn't this great? We can sit even closer and we can do more passing. But how it will actually manifest itself is the drivers who, it'll just be the same pattern. You know, the drivers who were pretty good at getting past will now find that their teammate is just as good as they were. And yeah, I think all the fans can probably say, yeah, this is great, more overtaking, more overtaking. But for me, as I've said, you know, it's a bit like lapping back markers. Now it's not a skill because of the, you know, the discipline that you have to have if you are being lapped. In the same way, I think overtaking will become less of a skill than it was before. And that'll go right down through the field. And that'll be the biggest thing. In terms of performance of the car, they're going to be a little bit quicker in a straight line. Probably. I think the braking will be pretty similar. You know, the 18-inch wheels, Pirelli are probably going to have more consistency. So I think it's going to be difficult to think of other areas where the new regulations are going to impact different driving styles. I think the key issue is going to be what the driver's ability was like in terms of forcing an issue with another car and finding room and getting past in the old days compared with today. And there we go. Egon Faulkner. Superb. Love the bits about Jim Clark and Sterling Moss. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I owe, I can't remember who it was now, sadly, but I owe one of our viewers, he just said, Jim Clark, 1965, please advise. So, you know, 65, for those that don't know, was the year in which Jim Clark effectively did the impossible. He won the World Championship and the Indianapolis 500 in the same year, 1965. A feat that will probably never be achieved again for a number of reasons. But, you know, in doing that, Jimmy had to miss the Monaco Grand Prix, and yet he still wrapped up the World Championship by Nürburgring. Pretty impressive. So, yeah, that will be a year that will live famously forevermore. And then there's Sterling, and I've been doing a little bit more reading about some of Sterling's thoughts and words, as you do. I mean, he was Sterling Moss after all. And then when asked about his most enjoyable time in Formula One, this is what Sterling said. My most enjoyable experience in a team was when I was with Mercedes because of the discipline and their absolutely professional approach. I respect drivers who are good, but I respect even more teams who are dedicated. That's what I mean by Mercedes' professional approach. Now, I say that and I read that because I've done this previous video about Lewis effectively starting the 2022 World Championship with like a 20 to 25 point deficit, given all the things that are going on at Red Bull and at Mercedes. And there's been quite a lot of comment about that, obviously. But it suddenly occurred to me that, of course, the solution to all of this is for Lewis to adopt the Sterling Moss attitude, which is, look, I've got 7 World Championships. If I win another one, brilliant. I'm just lucky enough to be driving still at the peak of my ability. I'm lucky enough to be driving for Mercedes. I'm going to enjoy 2022 and just be a racing driver. And, you know, he might well do that. And that'd be the way for Lewis to move forward, I think, from everything that's going on. The rule changes, George Russell, Abu Dhabi, everything else. That would be the way. And if I was close to Lewis now, that's what I would be. I would be getting him to read those comments by Sterling Moss, because I think they're very apposite to his current situation. Alec Aogh, thanks for your videos. Truly wish you were at every TV on every race. Oh, thank you very much. It's very kind. I mean, I'm kind of there in the background, quite a lot of them. And I don't know if you've seen from, I think I don't know where I put it, it's in the CV bit of the description of the video, currently working on a project which is yet to be announced, which I think you're all going to enjoy. So in not being at every race at the moment, hopefully there's going to be a big upside when this thing is announced. And it's going to be something that will embrace the entire Formula One world. So from beginning of time to tomorrow as well. So watch this space for that. I think it'll be in a couple of months before it's announced, but it's pretty cool. Jassus says, you're undoubtedly a massive Adrian Newey fan. Well, isn't everyone? Would love to see you interview him on this channel one day. Yeah, I've done a few interviews with Adrian. I'm not sure I've done them on this channel though. Yeah, I have. I mean, he's a lovely guy, known him for years, and lots of things to talk about. I think if I ring Adrian and say, let's do a chat, what he will think is, well, so much to talk about, and oh, Windsor's going to ask so many questions of so many different things that I haven't got the time, so I'll put him off. That's probably what will happen. He's probably right. I mean, where do you start with Adrian? Lotus 49Bs, or even before that, Eagles maybe, and then you go on from there. You know, there's so much to talk about with Adrian, and he's such a great guy. Anyway,